I could use a little help. I thought so.
You're supposed to protect us. You're the police. It's your job. Where are your men?
So the cliche of 1981's Outland is that it's high noon in space, a remake of the 1952 classic western starring Gary Cooper and Grace Kelly. And it is, of course, for the most part. I mean, the script was originally intended to be set in a western period, but writer-director Peter Hyams decided to move it to outer space due to the influence of Alien that had come a couple of years previously. But that classic Fred Zinnemann western isn't the only influence on show here. Outland's ingredients also feature sprinklings of Ridley Scott's deep space horror, and even a bit of Serpico thrown in there for good measure. And admittedly, Outland isn't star Sean Connery's finest movie, although he's okay in it, but it just might be its director's finest hour. There's some great moments in it and some aspects of it that annoy the life out of me. So let's take a look. So on a remote space station on Jupiter's moon Io, Marshal O'Niel, played by Sean Connery, must try and discover why the company's workforce have started killing themselves in mostly messy ways.
Jesus Christ, he's going in the elevator. There's one in the elevator without a suit on.
And he's soon knee-deep in the company conspiracy that has inadvertently caused these deaths due to a lethally effective synthetic drug that's being smuggled in. A drug that acts as a super amphetamine, enabling the workforce to work huge amounts of hours at incredible rates. So in the name of productivity and share value, the number-crunching boss Shepard, played by Peter Boyle, is pretty much in on this gig. And despite being the new boy in town and also suffering family issues, Marshal O'Niel decides to take on Shepard, regardless of the overwhelming odds against him. So Outland's an interesting film for a few reasons, really. Arriving in 1981, it came at an interesting time for sci-fi cinema. It was an especially great time for sci-fi family adventures, all kicked off by a little film named Star Wars in 1977. We got the sequel, The Empire Strikes Back, in 80 and Return of the Jedi in 83. We got a Star Trek film in 79, and James Bond even went into space in 1979 with Moonraker. However, nestled in amongst all this fun for the family, we got Alien in 1979, The Thing in 1982, and these films took adult themes and imagery and set them in the isolation and danger of deep space or an Arctic research station. The Alien films are essentially haunted house movies in space, and Outland is absolutely a western in space. Here, not only will the sheriff not leave his town, he actually can't because he's on a distant moon. He can't even go outside unless he puts on a spacesuit, which he does in the film's slightly clunky final act, which we'll get to in a moment. So I mentioned that Sean Connery is pretty much alone in his fight against injustice here, which isn't 100% true, as he actually does get some help from the station's washed-up physician, Dr. Lazarus, played by Francis Sternhagen. The pair teaming up to investigate why the miners are going berserk. Now, I love retro technology in movies, especially from this time period. But I'd also love to know how the pair deduce the properties of the mystery drug using about 4 keys on a keyboard and some kind of bendy computer graphic.
This is a drug.
You just won a prize.
But to be fair, the production on screen here is fantastic, for the interior anyway. The space station feels like a real space station, what is essentially an oil drilling platform in space, only one that's used to mine titanium. Full of grit and grime, even the bar the workers frequent looks awful. It won't surprise you to learn that many of the technical crew who worked on Ridley Scott's Alien also worked on Outland. Both films do share that very similar look and style. Now, so Sean Connery's sheer screen presence holds most of this film together. He hadn't been Bond for about 10 years now, and he gets to play a no-nonsense space marshal whose sense of injustice just won't let him turn a blind eye. There's very little of the Connery 007 charm on show, but he does have some good moments with Sternhagen's Doctor. The pair of them cut from the same cloth, apparently. And Connery does have that awesome voice that can capably dish out convincing orders.
In the third place, you're becoming a nuisance.
Yes, I know. I would like a report of all of these incidents that have happened during the past 6 months. I'd like it really soon, or I might just kick your nasty ass all over this room. That's a Marshal joke.
He's also more than capable, of course, in the action scenes, although maybe not the most comfortable when having to don a spacesuit in the film's finale. So Outland plays almost like a police procedural thriller for the most part, with Sean Connery investigating the station's deaths and butting heads with his superiors. It's only when Peter Boyle's corporate douchebag realises that Connery can't be bought that he's going to need to hire some added muscle, and the film starts truly earning its high noon comparisons. You see a couple of assassins are arriving on the next shuttle and a countdown begins. The problem here is that the countdown aspect's introduced relatively late in the film, and when it is, it doesn't really feel tense. And maybe it was just me, but showing the odd shot of a clock between images of Connery prepping for battle or even just sitting around, don't really feel the impending dread I think the film wants you to. Also, I think it's always concerned me that guns were being used in the sort of environment where accidentally shooting a hole in the side of a wall could kill everyone in the room. So director Peter Hyams was fresh off making the underseen Harrison Ford movie Hanover Street. Hyams' career would completely fall to bits after the 90s, maybe before that, depending on your tolerance for mid-90s Van Damme. His work here on this movie led him to be chosen to direct 2010, the year we make contact, both movies incidentally being set in and around the moons of Jupiter. But here he pulls together a pretty respectable action thriller. There's some great camera work as we follow characters through the station's hallways, and one particularly well-executed foot chase across, up and down many of the levels of the station. And I do have to give a mention to some of the gloopy special effects work that went into showing how decompression affects the workers. Here we have a live and let die expanding head effect before the bloody pop, which admittedly, not being an expert on space death, I suspect isn't scientifically accurate. Now, a couple of gripes that I do have, firstly being the ending, which I'm not going to spoil anything for you here, but the whole thing seems to run out of steam and grind to a bit of a halt. And secondly, whoever cast Sean Connery's son in this must have been having a laugh, as A, he looks nothing like his parents, and B, his acting's hilariously shoddy.
How are you doing?
Great. Mommy let me stay up late because this is when the call came through. I miss you.
I miss you too.
Mommy says as soon as you get done, you're going to come home with us.
However, shout out to Kiki Markham, a mostly TV actress who, as Connery's wife, does quite a lot with the little time she has on screen. So yeah, if you've yet to watch a badass Sean Connery lay down the law on a distant space station full of exploding lunatics, or maybe you just haven't seen Outland since its VHS heyday, maybe now's the time to go check it out.